Hi, everyone. This is Jason McGuire. I'm the Executive Director of New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms. And if you're watching this video feed tonight, I just want to say welcome and thank you. This is a monthly feature that we call Albany Update Live, where once a month I come on and I do some Q&A and we give a little legislative update. We talk about what's coming up in Albany this week and perhaps in the coming weeks. And then we answer some questions about some things that might be of interest to you. So if you are watching this video and it's live, then we would encourage you to submit questions via a comment section, either on our Facebook page if you're watching on Facebook, or on our YouTube channel. You can also leave a comment there. That comment will go to our producer, who can then feed questions to me during this time today. Additionally, if you would like to email a question, you can email a question to info@albanyupdate.com. That's info@albanyupdate.com. And I want to encourage you to think about submitting a question. If there's something you'd like to know about what's going on in Albany, or something going on even at the federal level, or something we can speak about that you're hearing about in the news regarding your government, well, we'd like to do the best we can to answer those questions and keep you informed as to what's going on. Well, I thought I would start with just a kind of a little roundup as we're heading into the final 4 weeks of the legislative session. There's really only about 14 days, legislative days left, days that folks are actually in Albany legislating bills and taking action. But the reality is that it's about a month. It stretches out. The legislature is scheduled to conclude on June 10th. Now, every year they probably go a few days over, and so we don't expect that they will end quite by June 10th, but that's the goal. That's about where they're going to try to end up. And that's kind of a goal for us to think about getting to the finish line, is maybe June 10th, June 15th, somewhere in there. And as we move closer and closer to the end of the legislative session, activity intensifies more and more. So each week, as we get towards those final days, we will see many more bills begin to move. Now, today I'm in Rochester, New York. The Capitol is actually closed to our activity there. So we're not actually able to access the Capitol right now. We don't have access to the building as a lobbyist or as a member of the public. It's really only open to legislators. Nevertheless, we have to lobby from our Rochester headquarters. And so I'm actually located in Greece, New York. We have some TV screens set up in the office building. I use my computer, my iPhone. We use, various devices to monitor governor's press conferences, Senate sessions, committee meetings, hearings, whatever might be going on, press conferences. Thankfully, most things are being live streamed today, and we can monitor things in real time. Again, it's not uncommon to have legislators who will reach out to us through text, through tweet, through a direct Facebook message or some other means of communication to find out our position, our particular bill, as a vote is being taken or as they're anticipating a vote coming up in a particular issue. So there's a lot of things that are going on, even when we're here in our headquarters in Rochester, in which we can influence what's happening in Albany. For those of you who are familiar with our organization, you know that our vision is a state and ultimately a nation where God is honored, where religious freedom flourishes, where families thrive, and life is cherished. There are 4 key issues that we deal with: protecting human life, promoting strong families, preserving religious liberty, and proclaiming the biblical concepts of justice and mercy. Now, again, those are the 4 issues that we focus on. We can't cover every issue that's going on in the federal government or in Albany. There's just too many things for us to pay attention. We don't have purview over every one of those areas, every bill that will pop up. But if it falls into those 4 buckets of protecting human life, promoting strong families, preserving religious liberty, or proclaiming the biblical concepts of justice and mercy, well, those are the issues that we try to focus on. And there's about 700, 800, 900 bills a year that we really focus on that deal with one of those 4 buckets. And some of the issues that we're currently watching in the final 4 weeks of the legislative session are things like we're watching right now an effort to mandate sex education in public schools. That is something that's been introduced in Albany. Senator Samra Brook has introduced her Senate 2584. And in the Assembly, it's 6616, sponsored by Assemblymember Kathy Nolan. And we're very concerned about this mandate for sex ed in public schools. And again, this isn't the kind of education that many families would like their kids to receive. Ultimately, we believe this is actually a conversation that should be had between parents and their kids. But ultimately, that is up to the decision of that family, or at least the local district, as to what they will allow to be taught in that school. But this effort, this bill, Senate 2584 and Assembly 6616, would be a mandate at the state level that would go to every school district, but it would follow national sex education standards. And again, those are not standards that the average family out there today would appreciate their kindergarten learning about certain things, or their fourth grader, or even their sixth grader. Once you get into high school, we are probably a little more realist as far as what the kids are discussing, but I'm still far more comfortable with parents discussing those matters with their kids than I am with Planned Parenthood coming into the school and advocating for their version of sex ed. The version of sex ed that would be promoted under this legislation would not teach abstinence. It would not teach the highest ideal of not engaging in premarital sex, of saving sex for marriage. It really does not make judgment. It doesn't try to put statements out there that would incline teenagers one way or the other. In fact, some people, and I'm one of them, feel that it really educates kids on not character regarding sexuality, but really it becomes a how-to manual. And that's just not something that I want to see promoted in public schools. Additionally, much of what is taught in sex ed under these national sexuality standards run contradictory to the values that our family has. And so we don't want our kids educated in that form of sex ed. Now, whenever I talk about this, there are parents that will say, well, that's why my kids aren't in public school. They're in Christian school, or they're homeschooled. And we love those options, and we support Christian schooling, and we support homeschooling. But, I have to realize that the vast majority of kids, even Christian kids of the churches that we represent, are going to find themselves in public education. And so really, as a Christian community, we cannot abandon the public school system. I love the fact that there are many Christian teachers that get engaged and make a difference in public school. I love the fact that there are Christians that run for school board and get involved, because we cannot abandon the public school system. Most kids will still be in that system, and thus we want to have an influence on it. So that's one of the issues that we are watching in Albany right now, is this sex ed issue. If you'd like to know more about that, you can visit albanyupdate.com/sexed, where we put a page together that has a little video about what this type of education is all about. It actually has some action items that you can take to help push back against this in Albany. There is some conversation that this bill will see some traction in the final weeks of the legislative session. So again, we're in the final 4 weeks, and there may be people that are making a push for this. There certainly seem to be some folks that would like to see this accomplished. We hope that it doesn't come up for a vote, and we're doing what we can to keep it at bay in the final 4 weeks here. So again, if you'd like to get involved in that issue, you can just go to albanyupdate.com/sexed to get involved. Okay, so if you have comments or questions, or you'd like to know more about an issue, again, let me just remind you that you can submit your questions via comment. If you're watching on Facebook or on our YouTube feed, you can go ahead and submit those questions, or you can email the question to info@albanyupdate.com. And in a few moments, I will open up my email and see what we can do to field some of those questions and address some of the concerns you may have. But while we're doing that, let me tell you about another bill that is moving. This bill just saw a committee vote. It is the Public University Emergency Contraception Education Act. For short, we'll just call it the College Contraception Act. And essentially, this is a bill that would require New York's public colleges and universities to display posters and distribute informational materials regarding emergency contraception. Now, they use the phrase contraception as if it's a preventative, but some of these contraceptions are emergency contraceptions, meaning they are taken after intercourse, and essentially they can be abortifacient in nature. So we are concerned from a pro-life perspective, and this is just something, again, that we are opposing. Now, this bill moved in the Senate Women's Issues Committee last week. It may see a floor vote yet. It may not, but it could. In that committee, every Democrat supported the legislation. Republican Senator Daphne Jordan actually voted against it, thankfully, and Senator Alexis White actually voted aye without recommendation, which means that she allowed it to advance in the committee, but she reserves the right to vote differently should that vote come up for a floor vote. So that was the breakdown of that particular issue. If you're looking to get involved in this type of an issue, you want to send a legislative note over to your elected officials regarding this matter, well, there's something you can do. You can either go to our website at albanyupdate.com and you can find the article regarding this, or you can go to albanyupdate.com/connect. And if you go to albanyupdate.com/connect, there you'll see a number of action items. We've made it very simple to use. You go there, you find an issue that you care about, you simply click on it, you type it in your information, you can edit the talking points that we've already included there and personalize it with your own thoughts, or send it as is, and the system will automatically route that message that you're sending to your state senator, your member of assembly, whatever respective parties we feel that is most important that receives that particular action alert. So the things that I'm talking about in this little Albany Update Live today are ways you can get involved, and you can usually find those action alerts where you can contact your elected officials at albanyupdate.com/connect, and you can get involved there. All right. So we've got a number of things that are moving. Let me take a quick question that came in. Kim Murphy wants to know about Senate 75. Senate 75 is a bill sponsored by Senator Brad Hoylman. He is a Manhattan Democrat. This was moving in the Senate Health Committee today. Now, erroneously, there have been reports on various social media circles that Senate 75 is actually a vaccine mandate bill. It does not require the vaccine. It is a vaccine database bill. And so it would create a vaccine database for those 19 years of age and older. You say, why 19 or older? Well, because there already is a database for those under that age. And so school students actually already are in databases. They track those vaccinations, but after a certain age, that no longer exists. Senate 75, sponsored by Senator Brad Hoylman, would actually establish a database for vaccinations for really adults. That moved in the Senate Health Committee today. Now, that's just a Health Committee vote. That is not the final stop. There are various places along the way where bills can be tripped up. Sometimes there's a better chance of stopping a bill in one committee over another. The makeup of the legislature right now makes it difficult to stop legislation. In the state Senate, there is a makeup of 43 Democratic senators to 20 Republicans. In the state assembly, there's like 110 Democrats to 40 Republicans. I think my numbers are a little off in the assembly, but pretty close. And those numbers there also reflect a percentage makeup of the committees. So if you look at a committee, and we'll take the Senate Health Committee, for example, if it is 2/3 Democrat controlled in the Senate, then the Democrats will control that committee by 2/3 and usually +1. So the makeup of each committee will look like a percentage ratio of what the floor vote would look like. So if the Democratic Party, for example, wants to move a bill, then they probably have the votes to move it as long as those members will vote the party line. Now, sometimes you can get members to kind of buck the party line depending on the issue, but oftentimes in committee votes, they will vote to support one another to move that legislation. So it's difficult with the makeup of the legislature where it is now to be able to stop certain bills. Republicans, and we're not a Republican-only organization by any means, but I will acknowledge that more often than not, when I'm trying to advance a pro-life piece of legislation, it is probably a Republican senator that is willing to carry that. If there's a question regarding a bill, and this just happened last week, a question regarding a bill we had on committee, we wanted clarification to establish legislative intent for potential court action later. Well, a senator raised the question on our behalf in that committee. We can't ask questions during committee, but the senators can ask questions. And so we will quietly submit a question to a senator, asking a friendly senator to ask the question to help establish legislative intent in hopes of laying some groundwork for something down the road. That happened recently. And so there's various strategies that are employed when you look at committee structure. And so while Senate 75 crossed the first committee on its way to becoming a law, it is just the first committee on its way to eventually floor votes in each house, should that happen. And this is not a foregone conclusion or anything that has been accomplished yet. It is the first bump along the way. It's the first battle in the war against a particular piece of legislation. All right. So looking at some other issues that we want to discuss today, I want to talk to our viewers about a bill that is a pregnancy center report bill. We've been getting a lot of questions regarding this particular issue, and people want to know what's going on with the pro-life pregnancy center report bill. Well, this is another Senator Brad Hoylman bill, Senate 470. You're going to know that name quite a bit when you hear bad legislation. It's also sponsored by Assembly 5499. That's Assembly Member Deborah Glick in the Assembly. And this particular bill would authorize the New York State Department of Health to study and report on the unmet health and resource needs facing pregnant women in New York. And the limited service pregnancy center is how it's referred to, but really by limited services, these political allies of Planned Parenthood mean pro-life pregnancy centers. And this is a report bill that would require that various pro-life pregnancy centers collect onerous data, things that would just slow them down and bog them down and really keep them from serving women, and would require that that data be submitted to the state. Well, I see no reason why the state should get between what's going on in that pro-life pregnancy center and the women who choose to enter those doors. If this was a Planned Parenthood facility, Planned Parenthood would be making that argument. But because it's a pro-life pregnancy center, we don't quite hear that same argument. And so you have legislators in Albany that are the political allies of Planned Parenthood that will use this legislation to target pro-life pregnancy centers. Now, a few moments ago, I talked about the committee structure and how questions are raised or things are said in committee. Well, I can tell you that in some of the committees regarding this issue, we do see viewpoint discrimination. This is clearly understood to be targeting pro-life pregnancy centers. And so we're opposed to that. And if you'd like to know more about this issue, you can visit albanyupdate.com/pregnancy centers. And again, you can go there, albanyupdate.com/pregnancy centers, and you can see a video that talks more about this issue, some action items, and a way to send an action alert to the legislature so they know not to further advance this particular bill. This is a bill, again, it's cleared one committee, but it is a bump on the road. It is not law yet, and we're doing what we can to stop it. There are a lot of bills we're going to talk about, and some of them will pass various committees, some will not. As we head into the final weeks of the legislative session, we really have to prioritize which bills we're going to really work fiercely against, because frankly, with so many moving parts, we need to prioritize our strategies around the bills that we feel are moving and that we can be effective in stopping. And so there will be various bills that you may see move in a committee where we don't think we can stop it in that committee, but we hope to stop it in another committee or somewhere along the way. There are various strategies for tripping up legislation. A bill that we are concerned about that has not yet moved in committee, but that we are sensing a little more movement behind, is a bill that would apply the Dignity for All Students Act to non-public schools. Now, again, when you hear something like the Dignity for All Students Act, that sounds like a good thing. This is an anti-bullying curriculum, the Dignity for All Students Act. Unfortunately, it has extended some of these protections to do things that will hinder the faith teachings of certain groups in New York. And so if you are a private school, you certainly wouldn't want to abide by what the state is suggesting we do regarding the Dignity for All Students Act. This is a bill that is sponsored by, you guessed it, Senator Brad Hoylman, Senate 722. And then there was an assembly sponsor as well in Jean Pierre, Assembly Member Jean Pierre. I believe it's Assembly 6399. That number may be escaping me at the moment, but I think it's Assembly 6399. And this bill would take the provisions of the Dignity for All Students Act, which is being interpreted in many circles to mean that biological males who identify as female students can use the restrooms of their choice, including female restrooms. If this is a biological male student who is playing on a female sports team and they travel, well, that biological male would likely room with a biological female under the Dignity for All Students Act. Well, that has happened already in the public school systems, that's been applied. Now there's an effort by Senator Brad Hoylman and others to apply this Dignity for All Students Act to non-public schools. And by non-public schools, we mean parochial schools, private Christian schools, Jewish yeshivas, various schools that have a faith teaching that would run contradictory to what the Dignity for All Students Act teaches regarding human sexuality and sexual orientation and gender identity. And if that were imposed upon Christian schools, for example, well, that would violate the faith of the faith teaching and the convictions of those Christian schools and likely the churches that have organized those schools. We think there are clear constitutional violations on this particular piece of legislation. So we're battling this one as well. The fact that this bill, Senator Hoylman 722, now has a assembly sponsor may mean it's starting to get a little more traction. So something we have to pay a little more attention to. Just the timing of it kind of makes us wonder. In an effort to protect those non-public schools across the state of New York, that's an issue that we're getting involved in. So if you have a question and you would like to submit a question, you can send it to info@albanyupdate.com. That's an email we'll check periodically, info@albanyupdate.com. Or you can leave a question in the comment section on our Facebook feed where you're watching this video, or on YouTube. If you're watching there, you can comment. That feed will kind of populate and we can pull those questions in. I know there have been a few questions coming in, so we'll check email real quick and just see what we got going on there, and then we can move to some other areas. All right. So a question is coming in regarding an assessment or critique of the Libertarian Party platform from a Christian worldview. That's a great way for me to really make friends and influence people, is to speak against other political parties or my thoughts on some of those. Our organization is nonpartisan. So we're not a Republican organization. We're not a Democrat organization. We're not conservative. We're not a libertarian. Essentially, what might concern me with this party, though, in particular Libertarian Party, and while I tend to prefer a small, limited government, I'm afraid that sometimes what happens is you tend to run out of morality on the Libertarian Party line. My view of the Libertarian Party line is, and just so, clear disclosure, I'm a registered conservative. I am, in the Conservative Party, because I think that the Conservative Party will take moral stands on issues as well as small and limited government. The Libertarian Party, to its credit, is a very small, limited government party. Where I sometimes part ways with the Libertarian Party, though, is there are positions the Libertarian Party will take that I do not favor. For example, I am not in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana, as New York recently did. But that is more often than not the position of the Libertarian Party. You will see many libertarians will favor the legalization of prostitution or even abortion. Now, I recognize that within the Libertarian Party, there is a battle going on over some of those moral issues, and I'm thankful for that. And when that battle's won, maybe I'll see things a little differently. But right now, I'm concerned that in those issues, you're going to run out of other people's morality in the Libertarian Party. It's not just a small, limited government. And I'll take the legalization of marijuana as an example. There are people that believe that we should have the legalization of marijuana, that it's just something that an individual does that has no bearing on anyone else around them. I beg to differ. I think that the legalization of marijuana here in New York State is going to have grave consequences for our state. I don't think it's just about someone growing a little pot in their backyard and smoking it on their back porch. I really think this is about whether or not we're going to commercialize and then promote pot in our state. And I am concerned about what that does for the next generation. And so while there are many libertarians who advocate for the legalization of recreational marijuana, My contention is that it really isn't going to be about just one person smoking it over here, but it does impact really the next generation. There's a reason why the pot industry is just itching to get into our state. And there's a reason why you're seeing edibles and why you're seeing all these other things that are laced with various levels of THC, and really to entice people to partake in really what are, I think, dangerous substances. So I have concerns over that. So I am a small government person, but I also would like to see morality expressed in our government. And I think there are some basic values that ought to unite us. And for me, things like the sanctity of human life, the dignity of the individual, is opposing legalization of prostitution, and other matters are one of those areas. All right. Regarding parties themselves, there are very few parties anymore in New York State. After the last election, a lot of the minor parties lost their line, if you will. So you're going to see two major parties and two minor parties that will appear on the ballot. You'll see the Democratic Party, which is the largest party in New York State. You'll see the Republican Party. You'll see the Conservative Party, and you will see the Working Families Party. Those four parties are the ones you'll see. There isn't really a constitutional party in New York State. All right. So as we look to other legislation, we'll take advantage of just a couple more minutes to tell you about another bill, and let's pick a doozy. All right. This is one that we are concerned about. I think everyone should be aware of, and it is the New York Health Act. The New York Health Act is sponsored by Senator Gustavo Rivera. It's Senate 5474 in the Senate, and it's Assembly 6058 in the Assembly. This bill, known as the New York Health Act, would essentially take and do away with your private health insurance and replace it with a government-controlled single-payer health insurance system. You can imagine what would happen if you didn't have choice in your medicine anymore. And this is a plan to basically make, universal healthcare, single-payer healthcare at the government level, government-controlled healthcare for every New Yorker. We're opposed to this for a number of reasons. One, if New York State really wanted to achieve universal healthcare, and by that we mean everyone who wants healthcare would have healthcare coverage, well, we're only about 5% away from making that happen. So instead of upending the healthcare system for 95%, we ought to just focus on getting healthcare for the remaining 5% that want it but don't have it yet. And I think that can be achieved far easier than actually trying to upend the whole system and create a government-controlled system. Show me one government program that runs more efficiently than private industry. I just do not believe that government healthcare would be as efficient as a private healthcare industry would be. We also have grave concerns from a religious liberty perspective. And I don't want to see this enacted because I don't want to have to pay, for example, for other people's abortions. I don't want to pay for sex reassignment surgeries. I worry about what this does for conscience protections for doctors and nurses of faith that don't want to participate in certain procedures. And so we have concerns over the New York Health Act. And again, these are all issues that we're monitoring, we're watching. Frankly, if you look at the paper alone, there are enough votes to pass the New York Health Act in New York State. But the reality is, I think the Democrats in control understand that this would not be advantageous for their reelection effort. And so I think there will be an effort to not move the legislation because they don't want to get too far out there on a limb and risk their Democratic majorities in the next election cycle. But there is a fight. The progressive wing of the party is trying to advocate for this. There's a little more sane wing of the party that's trying to control these things and not let something like the New York Health Act pass. And that is a fight within the Democratic Party right now as to what's going to happen there, who's going to lead the way. So that's an issue that we're watching. All right, we're about a half an hour in. We've answered some questions. We've talked about some bills today. We've walked you through the program here and told you some things to anticipate in the coming weeks. Let me just address that things, again, are going to intensify every day as we move closer and closer to the end of the legislative session. Things are going to change. Things are going to move rapidly. As we sense things are beginning to heat up, then we'll notify you through our email distribution list. So if you would sign up, there's a couple of ways you can do it. If you want to know the latest going on in Albany and even out of DC, if you want to get involved in various issues there, then you simply text the word freedom to 22828. You can text the word freedom to 22828 to sign up for our emails. Or you can go to albanyupdate.com/subscribe. And if you go there, you can also sign up to receive those emails and be informed about the issues that are moving in Albany or in Washington, D.C. Thank you for helping us to influence legislation and legislators for the Lord Jesus Christ. Have a great